Could Darren Rizzi get the full-time head coaching job in New Orleans? Why the Saints could go on a run? Ladies and gentlemen, off the bench, Hebert and Jacob Hester. And then the face of the franchise. I'm going to react like only I can do. We'll talk about this. I can't wait. So sit back, relax, kick your feet up. Unless you're not wearing any shoes, then keep the feet below. Deep, deep, dark below. No reason to show toes for free, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's go straight to it.
It's such an odd situation where how much is there really to take away beyond it being a very good day? Like you said, I'm very impressed you didn't give up any sacks. Very impressed you got after Kirk Cousins. I'm very impressed defensively that you continue to stop what is a pretty good Atlanta Falcons offense. I love that
gave up 500 yards of offense.
You have now caused them the insecurity of, are we actually that good? Like what a crucial loss to take. Is this going to affect us down the road? There's such major questions remaining about how much of what can you carry forward out of this game? And we've seen it time and time again. And maybe this is where Rizzi starts to write his legend. Now, I think Rizzi's in a tough spot though here, Jake, because even if he does very well over an extended amount of time here, you can't keep him, right?
You absolutely could. What the hell? Yeah, you absolutely could keep him. I think the organization probably would rather keep him. I think the organization is probably thinking like, how can we, best case scenario is we keep Rizzi. Because here's the deal. There's two different versions of a rebuild. The rebuild that's in the fans' mind and the rebuild that's in the front office's mind. In the fans' mind, it is get rid of Carr, trade players, stack draft picks, suck, get a top 3 pick, generational quarterback. That's the fans. I have a sneaky feeling in Mickey's mind and in the front office's mind, it is team's not that bad, got a ton of injuries. We'll kind of peel back some layers here and there. We'll get off some contracts that we have to. 2026 is kind of a natural expiration year for a lot of these contracts. A lot of the players either contract expires or whatever else. So, maybe that's a little closer to the actual time to get rid of some of these players. But I don't, and that's a huge divide. It's a huge difference. So if you are in the front office who's actually making the decisions, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they wanted to keep Rizzi around, wanted to keep the coaching staff relatively intact as far as like Kubiak, Janoko, maybe even Joe Woods, depending on how that plays out. And then they say, we know we have some pieces, the Rashid Shaheeds and the Chris Olaves and the Alvin Kamaras and some of those players. We know those players exist. So we'll let them keep playing. We'll let them kind of buoy the team while we kind of slowly but surely, by slowly I mean over the next 2 seasons, get rid of some of these contracts. And then do what we got to do, and then hopefully the young players we have get paired with some of these draft picks we hit on. 2016, 2017 draft happens again, and then next thing you know, we're a 10-win, 11-win team.
Because the whole idea is that you have to kind of hit reset.
Well, nailed that one. That's exactly what I was saying. Where, yeah, in the fans' mind, it is hit reset for sure. In the front office mind, I don't think that's the case. And when you have that kind of a disconnect and you have that kind of a totally different philosophy of how you're going to rebuild this team, because let me also say this. We are in a soft rebuild. Like, the team is being rebuilt. You saw that with the Marshawn Lattimore trade. I've said this a million times. Marshawn Lattimore was traded for basically 3 picks. We just ate the cap. There was no cap relief. There was none of that happening. So they're telling you what they're doing. They're showing you the plan. The plan is to kind of rebuild. The plan is get younger, nail a draft class. Same thing we did in 2016. Same thing we did in 2017. Leverage those players on rookie deals, cheap rookie deals at that. If you're thinking you're going to nail the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, cheap rookie deals, buoy the franchise that way. It worked in 2016, 2017. That's what they're trying to do. That's the plan. What is not the plan? I'll go ahead and tell you this. Spoiler. What is not the plan is suck eggs, get a top 3 pick, draft a quarterback, hard reset, trade away the entire team, release away the entire team, go from there. It's somewhere in the middle. We're somewhere in the middle of those two ideas, but hit rebuild, hit reset, and that like stereotypical like thought process, like how I guess when you hear like reset, rebuild, you think tear it all down. That I don't think that's the idea, like the ideology of the front office.
And if you were going to go the interim route here, unless maybe you don't love, like, unless he has like an Antonio Pierce type finish to the season, I'm not sure. I guess that get more complicated. I just feel like it's a massive uphill battle almost regardless of the results, because so much of this has been about needing to completely hit reset out of the Peyton era, and so having anybody really connected to the regime in such a deep way right now would maybe be
no.
an impossible ask. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, so what do we carry forward then? That's all I'm getting at. It's tough. It's a really tough spot for him to be in.
Well, it is, but it isn't when the top dog of Mickey Loomis is from that era. You know, like it's hard. It's hard to say if you're Mickey. It's hard to say I don't want nothing from the Sean Payton era. I don't want any of that here. And then he looks in the mirror and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I am running the show." So, I agree with it. Like I agree, but also like simultaneously, you could argue Dan Campbell's from the Sean Payton era. Okay. If Dan Campbell was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, it's a completely different culture, completely different identity. I do think the Saints need a new identity. I do think the Saints need a new culture. We have been cosplaying as Sean Payton's culture since he left. Does it mean that someone that coached under Sean Payton or with Sean Payton or around Sean Payton can't have his own identity and culture? I think that's unfair to say. I think that's unfair to just say it's impossible that Rizzi could create his own culture and his own identity. It's one game. I'm not saying Darren Rizzi is the next Dan Campbell, but he does have I think he has a better chance than people want to believe because of how weird interim head coaches can be, because of the Antonio Pierce failure in Las Vegas. So Rizzi has a shot. I really believe that.
It is. And if it was, like, he'd have to completely clean house. Like,
yeah.
For people that were there the entire time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you got some people that are new to this year, but.
Yeah, I mean, like Kubiak, right? I mean, I still feel like Kubiak's a good OC. And Rizzi is a great special teams coordinator. So it's like, I mean, those are two guys that you ideally wouldn't want to lose, but I'm not sure. Or maybe if you're doing the long-term rebuild, you do end up going that route. You kind of wait, you see what happens over a couple of.
Well, now see, if you are hitting the hard reset and you're saying tear it down, build it back up, to me, that's a reason to get rid of Rizzi. Because then you're thinking, if I'm tearing it down to build it back up, I want the architect in the building. If we're drafting a quarterback in the top 10 picks, if we're drafting, our like main players, if we are drafting who we think is going to be the foundation of this team for 10 years, I want the architect to do that. We're seeing that in Chicago. I thought Chicago was going to get rid of Eberflus last year because they were getting Caleb Williams. And in my mind, I was thinking, why would you want a guy on the hot seat why would you want that to be the architect of the team? And look what's happening now. So if you told me, if we reverse engineered this and you told me that the Saints drafted Shedeur Sanders, if you said, I can see the future, the Saints take Shedeur Sanders 6th overall, I would say, okay, well, no way Darren Rizzi's the head coach. And I would say that's the head coach's pick, because that would be the leverage you give a coaching like free agent. You would say, look, come to New Orleans. We've got the 6th overall pick. You can make that pick, and we'll give you the 2-3 years to develop that pick, make it work. And some coaches, it's like, oh, that's sweet. Okay, cool. That's an awesome opportunity. I love this player. I think I can do a lot of stuff with this player, et cetera. So A hard reset, a full tear down rebuild. Yeah, there's no reason to have an interim head coach. Go get completely redo the front, completely redo the staff, completely redo the roster, and make it your own.
Years, and then you go move and try to get like the guy, whoever the next big hot guy is. There's you know what? There's a million different ways you could play this. There's a million different ways this could play out. I guess what I was getting at is we all know that the interim bump is a real thing, at least for a week. But you know what happens after the interim bump? The vast majority of the time, the team falls off.
Yeah,
right,
sure.
and kind of turns back into a pumpkin, goes back into the team that got a coach fired in the first place.
Yeah. Earlier this week, I had an incredible commenter who threw this little nugget in there. 2.5 years. Dennis Allen, how long he lasted in New Orleans. Dennis Allen had a better record in his first 2.5 years in New Orleans than Dan Campbell did his first 2.5 years in Detroit. All right, so it can be ugly while things are turning around. You know, like the whole like team turns into a pumpkin. Like, yes, sometimes teams are just kind of bad. Like sometimes their roster's bad. Sometimes they're weak in certain areas. Like the Saints have certainly been weak in certain areas this year. If you have the right guy, just because you're struggling or the wins aren't there or whatever, like Dan Campbell, since he's been the head coach of Detroit, is one of the best against the spread coaches, which means he's in these games. 2.5 years, first 2.5 years, the record's terrible. He won like 15 or 16 games. Dennis Allen won 18. All right. But I guarantee you they were in those games. I guarantee you they were building things. They could see what they were doing. They had an identity. They had a culture. That's all part of it. You know, so if the interim bump goes away and we turn back into a pumpkin, but you can see the identity and you can see the culture, then maybe there's something there with Kubiak. Maybe there's something there with Rizzi. The Raiders are the opposite example. You could see the writing on the wall with Pierce because Pierce told you to your face. Pierce said, I'm punting on 4th and 1. I'm kicking field goals. We're pinning them back. We're doing this. We're doing that. And it's like, that's not going to work. That is not going to work. That is not how your head coach can be moving into 2024, 2025, 2026. And then look what happened immediately this season. Raiders lose because of botched, situational spot. And you knew it was going to happen. So everything doesn't fit into these like really neat boxes where it's like, oh, interim coach. That means he's a vibes coach. That means he's a defensive coach. That means he's a old school coach. That means it's not all linear. It's not all, or the same like with Dan Campbell. It's not like, oh, the guy who comes in, the guy who changes everything, the guy who builds the culture, he wins immediately. It's successful immediately. You can see it immediately. Not always. Not always. Sometimes, sure. But when you are in a unique situation, a very complex, complicated situation like the Saints are about to be in, you got to really get into the context. You have to really get into what's actually happening. You have to like really dig into it. Just like we did with the box score with Atlanta. How like D-Bob starts his video off with like, yeah, great job from the defense against Atlanta. Brother, they had 200-yard receivers. Bijan ran all over the place and he gave up 500 yards of offense. Like, not great. Not great at all. Defense did not take a step forward.
Yeah.
And so if Rizzi somehow avoids that and makes this consistent, I would be shocked, and I would say credit to him. Again, I just don't know if it means anything too much long term.
And certainly if you do end up drafting like a quarterback, like you're going to want like a complete kind of new staff, I think, to welcome that quarterback if he's going to be your franchise quarterback. I don't know. Like
unless you really trust Kubiak. I mean, we'll see what happens the rest of the way. Saints has 7 yards per play. That's pretty damn good. That's like elite. All right, 7 yards a play. So if they keep stacking that up and the Saints keep having 7 yards a play, I mean, they're not like 7 yards a play is legitimately. I mean, that's like A++, elite offense. But if the Saints keep having above average offensive production, then you probably do feel pretty good about Kubiak. And you probably will say like, hey, we are comfortable with him. We're comfortable with his system and we're comfortable bringing in people into his system. And maybe even you're thinking, This could be the guy in a couple of years. This could be the next guy. Maybe he's already in the building. Maybe you're just kind of bridging everything for Kubiak. I don't know. I'm just making that up. But everyone's on the hot seat. Everyone's being evaluated. But just because the season is kind of meh, if you're having 7 yards per play, that's good enough for me.
He's interesting because Kubiak's somebody that I would certainly say has not been given the best personnel to be able to go out there.
Or he just schemed up 2 MVS touchdowns on Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, well, you go 3 for well over 100.
Yeah.
I mean, he's throwing passes to guys that have never played an NFL game and then guys that have been out of the league for 2 years.
And I mean, like I said, Kamara looks like AK again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to admit, like Kubiak, the 3 games with Rattler was ugly. Bowling shoe ugly. But you got to admit, Kubiak has the offensive line playing much better, Trevor Penning included. He's got the running game leaps and bounds better than last year. He's got Alvin Kamara looking good. You know, like, I would not say, I'm not giving him an A+, because some of the decision making, whatever. But I mean, I don't think you can go lower than a B for Kubiak. I mean, like they just said, at some points, ladies and gentlemen, at some points he was rolling out Mason Tipton and Bub Means and Spencer Rattler, and then on the offensive line you had Connor McGovern, who just got waived. You had Connor McGovern and a couple other guys who just got waived. Like, not exactly the best horses for your first year, and things have been kind of okay.
Especially when, there's any sort of threat there. The Taysom thing. I mean, that looked like a great touchdown at the beginning of that game before it got called back. Yeah. So, whatever, man. We'll see. All I know is yesterday was fun. Yesterday was fun, and that was good because right now you look around Louisiana, and it's a bit bleak, guys.
Not for Tulane. Roll wave, baby. Not for Tulane.
It's a bit bleak. Saints seem really bad. LSU season now kind of done. Like, the problem with LSU season, Jake, is there's nothing to win. There's only stuff to lose now. Wow. Just
I mean, it's weird because the Saints situation isn't great. Like, the season is kind of cooked. Playoff aspirations we're talking about like 0.8% chance. Those kind of like long-term aspirations are cooked. And there's a lot of like what ifs. There's a lot of who knows. There's a lot of who's going to be the coach, who's going to be the quarterback, who's going to be this, who's going to be that. What are we going to draft? But we are in a very unique, new frontier of New Orleans Saints football, and it is a new chapter. We aren't even writing the new chapter right now. We are like it's like the preface, the preface, some of my friends would say. We're at that part of the book. We're at the beginning where like the trademarks and all that stuff are. So we're getting to the preface to get to chapter 1. And it's slow. It's long term. It can be quick as far as like next year, but even next year, we got to get through this year. You got to get through the off season. You got to get through the draft. You got to get, there's still a lot. And in a world where people and consumers and fans and whatever want everything now, and it's a very knee-jerk reaction now. I mean, you look at LSU. T-Bob just mentioned. LSU, a year ago, Brian Kelly's the king of the castle. We got a Heisman winner. Things are looking up. A year later, they're ready to buy his ass out and bring Jimbo Fisher back. Okay. So it's a very quick, very quick world we live in. And for the Saints, who it's easy to feel like they're at a standstill because every win, some fans are like, I don't even want the team to win. And when you don't want your favorite team to win and you've got like 10 weeks left of the season, that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. So I know you're not going to want to hear this, but all you can do in these moments is like embrace the journey, embrace the new, embrace the next chapter, imagine you're Haslett gets fired, Peyton comes in. It's like, man, we're never going to be good again. You know, we're always going to be a dumpster franchise. We're always going to be whatever. Embrace that turning of the page. Embrace that newness. And it might not work out. And there might be another chapter after that, and another chapter after that. Who the hell knows? Or we might be right there. I don't know. But I can tell you, I will be here pumping out content left and right. So get involved. Get in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.